Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining our webinar today, which is about what to do if a CQC inspector asks to talk to you. I'm your host, Ilaria, and I'm a customer success manager here at NurseBuddy. I'm joined today by Louie Werth, our speaker.
Hi,
Louie, hi, thanks again for joining us. Louie is the founder of Care Research, who creates feedback survey and training to help care services get CQC ready. A warm welcome to you again, Louie. Louie is going to be offering advice and tips about what to do if a CQC inspector wants to talk to you. Your feedback as a care worker is a really important part of the assessment process for care services, so it's really normal that inspector might want to speak to you. Louie will talk for about 15 minutes, and then there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. You can use the Q&A session here in Google Meet to type your questions. You'll find it by clicking on the grid at the bottom right of your screen. If you're on a mobile device, instead you have to click the three dots to see it. We'll get to as many questions as we can, and we're also recording the webinar today, and we will email it to you afterwards. So I think we're all good to go. The floor is yours.
Brilliant. Hi, everyone. I'm going to press the magic buttons and hopefully everything all works brilliantly. Just to say huge thank you to NurseBuddy for having me. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. The main focus of what I am talking today is help. The CQC wants to talk with me. What do we do when CQC come knocking? Can everyone see? Can people see things okay, Ilaria? Is everything looking as it should do?
Yeah, I can see your screen. Perhaps if you want to add it in presentation mode, but I can see everything clearly.
Sorry, let me just put it into, there we go. Is that a bit clearer for everyone?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so one of the things that I want to talk about today is just what CQC are doing, why they are speaking to care staff, and more importantly, some top tips on how you can kind of feel more prepared when CQC come knocking. We're going to make these slides available to you alongside a whole bunch of other resources, so please don't feel that you have to furiously write notes instantly and kind of capture everything. You will get a chance to look at the video, as well as seeing these resources and these slides at a later point too. So, what is CQC for? Very quick 10 seconds. CQC is there to ensure that care services provide great care and to ensure that people are safe. They are not the police. So if they come knocking, it is not because the home is in trouble. It is not because something is going wrong. One of the things CQC must do is regularly visit care homes and services and all kinds of care services under their jurisdiction to make sure that great care is coming. And I'm sure you have seen these ratings before: outstanding, good, RI, and inadequate. CQC are there to give an independent rating for services so that the public knows whether a service is good, outstanding, or perhaps is not where it should be, but also for us as services to be able to have an idea of where is our service at. Are we providing the best care that we can? As I said, this is something CQC are required to do. If CQC turn up, it is not a sign that things are going wrong. So the main question, why are they speaking to staff? Well, who are the people that see residents, clients, people that receive support every day? Who are the people at the first point of call when something kicks off with a family member or there's a concern? Who are the ones that are there working day in, day out under the processes, going through the procedures, living amongst the culture and leadership that has been established? Who are the ones that see the day-to-day workings of the services? It is you. And so the reason CQC are speaking with staff is they've realised that managers and leaders, obviously, they're going to have some stuff to say. They're going to have a bit of an agenda. They've got things that they've kind of got to go through. They've got a point to prove. On the other hand, people we support, families, we all know how that feedback can go, depending on kind of whether they've had their breakfast or not and how they're feeling. What staff represent is a really, really valuable central source of reasonably balanced evidence, because everything that happens in a service at some point goes through the staff, whether it be the policies, the procedures, the actions, the people, everything that happens in that service has some direct impact on you. And that is why for CQC, they're speaking to you not because they're worried that you're good or not at your job. They're speaking to you because if they've got 2 days, just 2 days to figure this whole place out, the people who probably know the most about what it's like to be here are you, the staff. They are speaking to you as staff not to catch you out. They're speaking to you because they desperately want to figure this place out. And you are probably their most useful information source to do that with. So how might CQC speak with us? We'll talk about what to do in a moment, but just to kind of give you an overview, there's a couple of ways CQC like to speak with staff. The most common one, of course, is in person on the day. They might be doing a physical observation if it's a residential service or a supported living service, and so they'll speak with you. They might kind of catch you in the middle of a shift or have a little chat with you, and they will try and ask you some questions, speak with you in person during that inspection. They sometimes offer the opportunity to do small groups or focus groups. That's becoming a bit less common, but it is something that services can recommend or suggest if they think it will work. Another way CQC, with permission and with the consent of you as staff and managers, is to speak with you via a phone call. Now, the pluses of a phone call is that you can speak with staff, you can speak with CQC outside of your workplace. So some staff feel they can be a bit more free, a bit more open. They don't have to balance, providing care to the people they support and speaking with CQC at the same time. So for some people, that phone call can be a really good option for them. And finally, probably one of the most common ones at the moment is CQC sending an email to staff with a whole host of questions. Usually it's a lot of questions, maybe 25, maybe 30. There is no expectation for staff to answer all of those questions. And I think one of the pluses of the email is you get space. If someone asks you a question, tell me about a time where an individual needed bespoke support. How did you work out what was right for them, and how did you make sure it was in line with their care plan? If I say that to you now, you got about 2 seconds to have a little think about your answer. If I send that to you in an email, you got a couple of days. Have a think, chat with your colleagues, chat with your manager, have a little look at what ChatGPT says. I didn't say that, but it is an option. How can I respond to this? You have the cognitive space to have a think. So as well as that in-person on the day conversation, those emails can be a really great way for staff to answer questions and have a little bit more thinking space. A couple of things to remember, and then we're going to jump into some practical pieces. I want to make this as practical as possible. This is not going to happen frequently. So if CQC do rock up and they want to have a conversation with you, it's one of those things that, do you know what? This isn't going to happen for another 3, 4, 5, maybe 7+ years. So I might as well give this my best shot, because at the end of the day, once this is done, we don't have a chance to redo it for quite some time. And it's really good for everyone to be as involved as possible. The other really important thing to remember, they are assessing the service, not you. They are not testing you. This is not a quiz. This is not an exam. This is not a test. This is not them trying to figure out, is he or she good at their job? Should they be doing this job? Is this for them? Should they be employed? They're not sussing you out. They are trying to figure out the service through you. The best, the best analogy I can come up with, and it's not the perfect analogy, but it is true. You are not on trial. You are giving evidence. Does that make sense? You are not on the stand. They're not trying to figure out whether you are a good, quote unquote, bad, quote unquote, care staff member. They are trying to work out through your experiences and your knowledge and what you have experienced, whether the service is a good service. Another important thing to highlight, this is a chance to celebrate. What CQC want to see is the success stories. If you can celebrate the great care that you provide, if you can celebrate your team, if you can demonstrate, here is how we've developed, here is how we've improved. It's not about things being perfect. If they went to a home and that service had no safeguardings for a whole 12 months, that would terrify a CQC inspector, because it probably means that things aren't being reported, because that's not real life, is it? We all know that stuff happens, things can go wrong, people make mistakes, and so on and so forth. This is your chance to talk about that progress, to talk about that development, to shout about the achievements. Another really important thing to bear in mind, you are not inferior. Sometimes people see CQC inspectors and think, oh, it's this CQC inspector. They must have been an absolutely amazing manager once, or they're an incredible care staff member and they've been promoted to the kind of upper echelons of CQC. That is not what happens. Many people in CQC come from a care background, but they're not in CQC because they're some super duper whiz amazing care leader. They are there because they applied for the job and they got the job. But actually, you are the professional in this space. You are the expert in your service. So don't think of it as like a head teacher and a child having a conversation. This is two professionals, someone that's now working with CQC and yourself, trying to figure out how good this service is. You are peers. You are professional peers. It is not a hierarchical thing. It can feel like that because they're new and, maybe they've got a scary suit on and they're kind of red pen out. But fundamentally, you and the inspector are professionals having a professional conversation. You are not being assessed by a superior in terms of care experience necessarily. So let's talk about the practicalities. How do we actually go through this process? Number one, highlight your experiences. CQC want to know what it's like. They want to know what it's like to be in your shoes. They want to see what you see, hear what you hear, know what you know. A really good structure for any CQC questions are what and why. What happened? Why did it happen? What do I believe? Why do I believe that? What would I do? Why would I do that? What and why are a universal structure for answering almost every CQC question. Occasionally, if they're asking about something that's a bit negative, maybe there's been an incident or an issue, what next is a great way to finish it. So you can say, this is what happened. This is why that thing happened, unfortunately. And this is what's next. This is how we have improved. Let's talk some other bits and pieces. Really important things. What if I don't understand the question? Sometimes we just get a bit starstruck. We just kind of lose our words for a moment, or we're so kind of in our head that we're not really listening. Sometimes CQC might ask a question because they can, and it's a word that maybe you're not very familiar with, or it's a term that you don't use in your service. There are lots of services that use lots of different terminology. Rather than going, I don't understand, it's absolutely fine to not fully get a CQC question. That is their job, is to ask you questions that make sense. A really great response. If someone asks you a question, you don't understand the question or you don't understand the term, instead of saying, I don't understand, just say something like, could you make the question clearer? Could you explain your question? It's a little unclear. What you're doing is you're pushing it back on them and saying, you've come and asked me a question. It's your responsibility to ask a question that makes sense and that is clear. So can you make the question clearer? Could you explain your question? That is completely fine. And often people feel a lot more confident saying, can you make the question clearer, than saying, I don't understand. I don't understand makes it a you problem. Can you make the question clearer? Makes it a them problem. And it is a them problem because they're the ones coming in wanting to ask you questions. The least they can do is make sure they ask questions that are clear to you. What if I'm asked to ask something that's not related to my role? Right, this is a really important one. Please do not have a guess. I was doing some training. We do training on getting care staff ready and kind of speaking with care staff. I did a training day once and there was a lady and I asked her a question about meds and in particular about covert medication, which is kind of giving medication covertly, perhaps due to kind of capacity issues. This lady had a go. She didn't realize that she wasn't expected to answer this question. I didn't know who she was, so I just let her answer this question. And as I listened, I was like, oh my goodness, I hope what she's saying isn't true because she's broken about 100 different laws. I then asked her, tell me a little bit about your role. Turned out that she was one of the cleaning team. So this wonderful lady who was part of the cleaning team had a guess at a meds question around covert medications. That is not what you do. Just because CQC asks you a question, if it's not a question that makes sense for your role, don't have a go. A really great way to respond is to say, hey, my role as a care worker doesn't involve, for example, medicines. It's best to speak with, and I always say, throw someone under the bus. Pick someone by name that you know should be able to answer that question. So my role as a care assistant means I don't really get involved in the meds. Have a chat with Shirley. She's one of the nurses. She'll be able to answer that question. Two great things about that. Number one, you're not having a guess and kind of getting things wrong. Number two, you're helping the inspector. You're helping them know who they should go to ask that question and get their answer. Because it's not clear. Looking at yourself, looking at your badges, what your role is. CQC are kind of be going on a hunch in terms of who they bump into. What if I don't know the answer? Okay, don't panic is the first thing. It's absolutely fine to do any of these things. Number one, just ask them to repeat the question. Sometimes hearing it a second time just kind of clicks. You go, oh, you're asking about this. Okay. You can ask to return to the question later and go, can we go back to that one? I need to have a little think about that. That's completely fine. Again, you can do what we said previously. Say the question isn't quite clear. Could you make that question clearer? And if you genuinely just aren't sure, you don't know the answer, you can say, I'm not sure about that. I think it'd be great to speak with And again, throw someone under the bus. Let them know someone that is worth speaking to that might be able to answer that question more effectively. This is a really interesting one. And then we'll go for a bit. We'll finish shortly, and we'll go for some questions. What if you are really busy? This is a really important point that I've realized a lot of care staff don't always recognize. As a care provider, as a member of your team, your primary job that day is to provide amazing care. Speaking with CQC is a secondary issue. If you're in the middle of dishing out timed meds and CQC want to yoink you for a chat for half an hour, it's completely fine to say, I'm really sorry, I've got a range of timed medications that I need to give at specific times. Please, can we chat at this point? Or if you're in the middle of, if you're about to go and provide personal care to someone and you know that person is in distress and needs your help, but CQC kind of just corner you and ask, it's absolutely fine to say, I'm just in the middle of XYZ. I'd love to speak with you. I'm very happy to catch up in about 10, 15 minutes when I am free. Your job is to provide great care that day, and CQC will respect you and fully understand. Don't put people at risk. Don't leave someone on the toilet for half an hour because CQC want to ask you questions about providing great care. That is, quite an ironic flip of situations. So don't be afraid to explain that you're in the midst of things. Recognize CQC are there to observe and to speak with you, but your primary job is to provide great care. I'm going to give you a few little examples of questions. These are real questions that CQC have asked. We'll send you these slides. You can have a look, but just to kind of give you a flavor. Things like, what does safeguarding mean to you? How do you support residents or clients to raise concerns? How does the service ensure communication is adapted to residents' individual needs? Explain how a person's medicines preferences are documented and respected. Now, some of you might have an answer for that. Others might go, actually, I'm not involved in kind of the documentation of medicines. It would be best to speak with, and then name someone. Tell me about a recent change in a person's needs. How did you adapt their care and support them and their family through this change? These are all things that you do each day. Tell the story. Let them understand, not just that you know the knowledge, but you've done the work. I often say, if you've worked in a care service for 1 week, you've got 40, 50 hours of experience. Multiply that by several weeks, several months, several years. You have so many experiences to draw on. Don't be afraid to draw on those real experiences. I'm not going to jump into this. We're going to go to some questions in a moment. One little thing I just wanted to quickly talk about. If you're feeling that actually, as a care staff team, I would love some more training on this, we have our care staff confidence training day. What we typically do, we do a morning session with one set of staff, an afternoon with another set of staff. Then we have a whole suite of online videos, activities, over 100 practice questions that your services and staff teams can then use. At the end, in a moment, I'll show you a QR code. If you give that a scan, you'll get the results, you'll get the PowerPoints, you'll get a bunch of documents, but you'll also get 2 weeks access to the online demo course. You can kind of have a look at some of those resources as well. So there's a QR code. Again, feel free, if you want to give that a scan, you can. Pop your email in and we'll make sure this PowerPoint and a whole bunch of additional resources comes through to you. I believe we still have 10 minutes for questions. I am just going to call out into the ether now. I do hope someone is there to then take on the question piece. I know that was a whistle-stop tour. I tried to cram in essentially a full day of training in 15 minutes there. So there is lots more that we can share and discuss, but hopefully that's been a great starter point in terms of things to think through when CQC rock up and have a chat with you.
Absolutely. You were amazing, Louie, and
Yeah.
thank you so much for the passionate and really useful tips. And I'm sure that a lot of the care workers that joined us, they feel reassured just listening to you. And I really love what you said about considering yourself a professional peer to CQC, because I think so many people have this perception that is some kind of identity that is superior to them, which kind of brings me to the first question. Maybe this is led a bit of the fear of the perception of the CQC, but what if I feel like I don't really want to talk to an inspector? What should I do then?
Great question. So, you have a right to refuse. So you do have a human right to not have to speak with CQC. What I would be cautious of, or what becomes concerning, is if a service has a situation where lots and lots of staff are refusing to speak with CQC, CQC start to get a bit suspicious because they start to go, well, what do they know they don't want us to find out? What has the manager said to us? What's going on here? So I think you have the right to say no. You may want to speak with your manager in advance and say, look, I just want you to know, maybe you have very, very real reasons. Maybe there are anxieties and other issues that are a significant issue. And that's fine to let your managers know that and maybe help them to guide the inspector. What I would say is it comes unstuck when lots of staff or all staff don't want to speak with CQC. And we've had services that have got an RI or inadequate in learning culture and in kind of some of the other areas of CQC for the simple reason that no one spoke with CQC, and that raised alarm bells. So obviously it's not exclusively on your shoulders, but just, make sure that it's not the whole team that are refusing to speak to CQC, because that can cause bigger challenges down the line.
Thank you. Sorry, also a quick reminder for the audience, you're more than welcome to keep using the Q&A section. You can find it at the bottom right of the screen. If you're on a mobile device, you have to use the three dots, but all your questions to do, you can just pop them through there. Something else that you mentioned at the beginning is about, for example, checking if it's a good idea to talk with your manager first before you start to talk with an inspector, which seems like a solid advice, especially of what you said in terms of like, I shouldn't really make things up, right? I can always say someone else will know better, but of course, any more insight for like this kind of situation that would be very helpful from your way.
So I think there's a couple of things that services and teams and managers need to think through. So I think as managers, and I'm not sure if we have leaders and managers in the talk, but if so, this little point is for you. Try and organize details of your staff, their name, their role, and maybe any other information. For example, it might be that someone, they've been working at the home for 6 years, but they've just come back from a year of maternity leave. So anything that happened 4 months ago, they're going to have no recollection of. So I think managers and leaders, it's important to make sure that they have information that they can share with CQC so that they have more of an idea of who they're speaking with. I think for staff, one of the things that I believe we're including in the email that we're sending out, it's great for you to be able to share your preferences ahead of time. It's tricky to do this while CQC are in the room. It's much better to try and have a time, in the next couple of weeks where people gather and share their preferences. Do you want to speak in person? Do you want to be on an email? Are you happy to have your phone number shared? I think doing that ensures that hopefully people don't feel put out. And I think the third thing is when it comes to being asked something that maybe you don't know the answer to, don't just default to the manager, because actually there's a lot of things day to day that your manager isn't going to have a huge, your manager doesn't know what happened yesterday evening on Thursday because he or she or they weren't on the floor. So if you can direct a question to someone that's not the manager and kind of keep it within your staff team, that feedback is going to have an extra level of power rather than everyone going, speak to the manager, speak to the manager. Try and, if there is something you're not quite sure about, try and send it to another team member rather than just sending everything to the manager. Because actually, CQC are going to have a chat with the manager. They actually are far more interested, dare I say, in what you have experienced in your role on the floor, working with people, with families, day in, day out.
Thank you. And I know you also mentioned in the beginning that the CQC may ask a lot of questions, but they don't actually expect you to answer all of them. But we had questions from the audience asking, do you know how many questions the inspector usually may ask?
Great question. So I think there are different, obviously every inspector is their own kind of entity. I'll start with the emails because that one we've got some very solid data on. Most of the CQC emails have somewhere between 25 and 30 questions. Now, obviously, you are not going to, unless you really, really love writing huge amounts of answers, no one is expected to answer all 25, 30 questions. We typically say to staff, try and answer maybe 5 to 8 of those questions that are most connected to you. So if you're the activities coordinator and they ask you a question about the service activities and well-being of the residents, clients, people you support, of course that's going to be a great question for you to answer. There might be others that aren't. So the emails typically have 25 to 30 questions. Now the conversations really vary depending on time. So there might be a conversation that's kind of 15, 20 minutes We have known CQC speak to people for longer, half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour. That also depends on how long staff are talking for. So obviously, we all know there are some people that you could ask them one question, it would take them a whole hour to finish it. We know others that will answer every question with about 3 words. What I would say is that typically, the emails have got those 25 to 30 questions. The conversations are going to be maybe around 20 minutes, half an hour, possibly a bit longer for people who have more to say, possibly a bit shorter for people who have slightly less to say. So that's kind of the ballpark of the experience and the questions, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And I think we had a very good follow-up questions as well. And it is, I forgot actually to inform the inspector about something important. What should I do? Should I send them some information later on?
And can I just check this is the care staff or a team?
Yeah, yes.
Brilliant question. That is a great question. So I think there's 2 options there. If they are physically in the building, let's say most inspections now are lasting 2 days, right? So let's say they've come on the Tuesday, you've had a chat, and then you go, oh, I forgot, I wanted to raise blah, 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 blah. And you're in on Wednesday and it's your shift and you're happy to meet with them, then maybe see if you can get hold of them on Wednesday and say, I'd just like to say, I wanted to highlight this and this and this as well, just so you knew that. That's one option. Option 2, your managers and leaders will have an email address for that inspector, and we'll be sending a whole host of extra evidence after that inspection day. So a few years ago, the inspection day was like, it's inspection day. Now the inspection day is actually quite a small part of it. They'll do the inspection, but then often for several weeks, your manager will be communicating with your inspector, sending evidence. So there will be space over that time also to send information either via email yourself, if you're comfortable doing that, or perhaps to write something down that your leader or manager can then send if you're more comfortable with that. So don't feel like, oh no, I had this conversation and they're gone forever. They'll probably be back tomorrow. And even if it was the last day, there's going to be several weeks of CQC and your manager communicating virtually and digitally. And I'm sure you'll be able to be involved with that. And your manager or leaders will be very pleased to send extra information from you. So yeah, that's what I'd say to that one.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Louie. And I think we are at the end of the webinar now. So I wanted to thank you again, really, for all your advice. And thank you again for joining. So as Louie has mentioned before, in his team at Care Research offer full day of trainings for both care workers and managers to help you get CQC ready. So if you'd like to know more, you can visit careresearch.co.uk. And you can also look out for the link in the email with the recording of this webinar. Our next session would be in May, and we'll be working with people with dementia. So thank you so much, Louie, and for everyone to join us today, and take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.